Hello and welcome to another episode of the ADHD Goals podcast. I am delighted to bring you another special guest today, and I've been looking forward to this episode for a while now. Her name is Erica Shoop, which is a fantastic name. She is the co-founder of Kula, which is a community for neurodivergent individuals, and she's passionate about bringing people together and helping them grow. So, how are you today, Erica?
I'm doing really well today. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here as well.
Oh, excellent. I came across your website, the Cooler Community, quite some time ago, and it looked really exciting. It's one of the I got an instant dopamine hit from sort of because it's a fantastic looking website, but also the idea of creating a community for people who are neurodivergent and bringing people together and helping them grow. That's very exciting for me because I'm the type of ADHD person that gets very excited at the beginning of projects when there's all the ideas and everything's fizzing. And in my mind, that's what I was imagining your community is. So before we get into what the community does, I tend to like to find out a little bit more about the guest. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey so far?
Yeah, of course. So I've been working as a business coach in some capacity for the better part of about 15 years. But when I lost my job in 2021, I decided to start my own business. And I was like, this is going to be super easy because I've been telling people how to do this for like 15 years. And it turns out that even with all of the business knowledge, there's a lot of other like very human things that came up for me that kind of stopped me in my tracks.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, a lot of those things were related to neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm.
And I only came to find that after I found a new partner. We started seeing each other in 2022, and he is neurodivergent. So when I was in the early stages of this relationship, I was like, I should probably start learning some things about like ADHD, and so that I understand like him and how to communicate and like all of those kinds of things. And the more I read about it, the more I was like, uh-oh,
Ding, ding,
so
ding,
much
ding.
of that, so much of this resonates with me.
Yeah.
And so then I started diving deeper into the differences of the way ADHD presents in females versus males and how often females are missed in diagnosis at younger ages. And in retrospect, so much of my life makes so much more sense now, especially the parts where I was really struggling in the early stages of being an entrepreneur myself, because there was a lot of like rejection sensitivity that was causing this, that was like fueling like perfectionism and imposter syndrome um and just the task paralysis or the demand avoidance that would come when I started to feel overwhelmed by all of those things, or just overwhelmed by the idea of like, you're an entrepreneur now, so everything on your to-do list is yours. You don't get to
Yeah.
assign it to someone else. And so that would cause the sort of overwhelm or shutdown. And I would just go through these bouts of like hyper focus and hyper productivity and then like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in retrospect, a lot of that made sense. And I since have really shifted my approach to my own business to doing things in a little bit more of a sustainable way that kind of jive better with how my brain is wired. And therefore, that's also how I coach my clients. Everybody's different, but a lot of what I learned is just to approach everything with curiosity, because I think formally I really like attached to like rules or systems that I've
Mm-hmm.
seen work and kind of stuck to it with this rigidity of like, this is the way it works, instead of I just look at problems and every client that I work with a lot more curiosity and creativity, because I think that's what we all need, since we're all just a little bit different.
Yeah, I can certainly resonate with. I've written quite a bit down whilst you were talking. The RSD, the perfectionism, the imposter syndrome, and then becoming overwhelmed. But it was that aspect of you've been a business coach for 15 years, so you know what it is you needed to do, but were stuck in the actual doing of it. And what I find with my ADHD coaching clients is people with ADHD tend to know what it is that they need to do. It's there's somehow there is a brick wall in front of them that is stopping them from doing that. And I think that, like you said, each and every, you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD, they're all different. And it's about discovering what is in front of you that's stopping you. And that can be different, all manner of things. It's a fascinating sort of interwoven onion skin of things.
Yep, exactly. And I think it's so interesting. The best part for me about being in community, or even just listening to podcasts like this, or watching creators on LinkedIn or other forms of social media that are sharing their stories, I don't know that I've ever seen a person where I say, like, every single thing you've just said resonates with me, but there's, like, parts over here and parts over here and parts over here, and when you start to see yourself in other people's stories and kind of hear about their experiences and how they've, learned how to navigate some of these unique challenges that we have, then your own wheels start turning, and you can be a little bit more creative in your approach, or you can be a little bit more compassionate with yourself during these, like, times of challenge when it feels like such a debilitating thing. Like you said, it's like, I know exactly what I need to do, but I cannot mobilize myself to do it.
Mhm.
And and that feeling is so real, but it gets so heavy, and then we start to shame ourselves and go through this whole, like, spiral and cycle, and yeah,
Well,
it's
I think that's the interesting thing about discovering that you have ADHD later on in life.
mm,
And I want to sort of, where I'm going with this is the thought of explaining to a neurotypical person about what ADHD, so somebody, a neurotypical person that doesn't have anybody in their life that is ADHD, and they probably just hear about it as much as perhaps you or I knew about it before we had to start looking into it, is that it's very hard to describe the challenges because we don't own those challenges. Everybody has procrastination from time to time, overwhelm, stress, these sorts of things. So when you say, "Oh, these are the challenges that I face," they go, "Oh yeah, well I get that. Cool, everybody does." It's almost impossible to explain to them that what it's like when you don't know why you can't do something. And if you haven't discovered that you've got ADHD until later on in life, you've built up all of these negative labels inside yourself, or you've built up a load of evidence to say, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. I've tried." The older you get, you go, "Oh, well, I tried to do something once, well, 3, 4 times, and it never worked. So what's the point?" And then you get stuck, unable to move, and it's really challenging to convince them that of what it's like to be inside your head and not able to move and feel, you know, immobilized.
yeah. I can 100% relate to that. There's difference. Um, I think the difference for me is that I I feel it in my whole body
Mm.
when stuff like that starts to happen, in my brain. Like, I feel it in my whole body. Like, that's that's where it feels, like, debilitating and paralyzing. Whereas, uh, the difference between, procrastinating that because I just don't feel like doing it right now, versus I know that I should be doing it. I want to be doing it. I know that I can do it, but I, like, can't make myself do it. Then it starts to, like, I start to feel the weight of it in my whole body. I don't know, maybe that
Mm.
part of the experience is just me, but it's like, and I don't know necessarily what that's connected to, but it's more debilitating than just like, yeah, I don't feel like doing that right now. It's
Mm. Yeah.
there's
I mean,
something bigger at play, and I shamed myself for a long time. I think like you said, like we've attached all these like labels or a value to our productivity or our ability to get things done, and things that look really easy for other people, we can look at that and say like, why this shouldn't be that hard? Why is this so hard for me? And then we just keep riding that shame spiral down.
yeah. I mean, I certainly have in the past, and I have to work on um that hyperachiever saboteur that is, I can look at people that around me that I know and almost be sort of jealous of their success and think I know that I can do that, but why can't I? And I suppose, I've got a love of learning as well. So the more I learn about things that I want to do, and then if I procrastinate or feel that I'm stuck, like the more that I tell myself I can do, but then don't prove to myself that I can, that like the gap, the distance between who I want to be or where I want to be gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I suppose the bigger that gap gets, the the less the far away you are from being true your true self and it's hard. It gets harder and harder.
Yeah. The more I learn, the more I know I'm capable of doing something. I'm a master. I heard another coach one time, her name is Dr. Amanda Barrientes. She called it procrastinating. And I was like, if you did not just describe my ADHD to a T, I'm like, but it's also rooted in our perfectionism and rejection sensitivity, right? Like I don't know enough. I haven't had enough practice, or I need to learn more. I need to be better at this before I go forward, because if I don't do it perfectly the first time, then no one's going to like me, or no one's going to, it's all like so deeply interconnected. But procrastinating, I was just like, man, that might be the best term I've ever heard to
And
describe my daily life.
that, yeah, I definitely resonate with that as well. And it's such a complicated thing to work through though, because it's very difficult to look at your strengths and challenges in black and white in terms of, oh, that's a strength, so that's always going to be good for me. Or this is a challenge, so it's always going to be a challenge and I must overcome it. Is that it depends on the scenario as to whether your strength is going to help you or hinder you, or whether might be able to use one of your typical challenges or saboteurs rather to overcome another saboteur. It's like I know I was chatting with someone the other day about I can't remember what it was specifically. We'd identified some things that cause challenges for them, but in this one specific thing, they said, well, in this case, you can use that saboteur as a way of sort of overcoming this specific challenge. Um, so it's very difficult to say that things are black and white. You have to sort of arrive at a specific challenge and say, this is how I'm going to overcome that, I think, and prepare for it in that way.
Right. I I love the way that you articulated that, because that reminds me of the conversation in the neurodivergent community around the phrase your neurodivergence is your superpower, or
Mm.
things like that, where it's like it only feels like a superpower if you are privileged enough to be in a position where the things that you are good at are celebrated, and they aren't trying to sort of like change them or force you to do things a certain way. They're allowing you to do things in a more creative way, or, all we're focused on is the end result and not necessarily how you get there. So if my way of doing things is different, that's okay. But for a lot of people, it doesn't ever feel that way. It doesn't feel like a superpower. It just feels like challenge after challenge after challenge.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I think there are definitely so many scenarios where I can recognize how elements of my neurodivergence have served me so well, but those exact same things have been challenging in other scenarios. And it depends, I think, a lot on the people around you or the environment as a whole, and
Mm.
whether or not those qualities are. I mean, we were just talking the other day about the quote, um, what's the quote about the goldfish? If you like ask a goldfish to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life thinking it's stupid or something like that. It's
Yeah.
basically like how you, I'm paraphrasing because that's not exactly it, uh, um, but it's
I'll
like
have to
there are
look that
ways
one up.
in, yeah, there are ways in which we can leverage a lot of these things as strengths. Um, but it might mean a different approach or a little bit more creativity or a little more curiosity. And it might mean that we also need to acquire the language to articulate our inner experience and our inner world to the people around us so that they understand.
Mm.
And that also means that they need to be willing to understand, which I think the way these conversations are growing and spreading now, there's so much more understanding than there used to be, which is a really cool thing to see. Um, but yeah, there's there's a lot of like nuance and a lot of like uh there's two sides to all of those
Mm.
things.
Yeah, I think that you're quite right. That it's very difficult when sort of going into, if an individual is wanting to sort of approach the company that they work for or with a place of work and um, come out as neurodivergent. It's such a, how is there's no sort of set guidelines for how the company then deals with that, and that can be challenging because is there too much emphasis on the individual to um, come up with what affordances make that possible? Are they going to respond in the correct way? Are they going to make it more comfortable for them, or are they going to just maybe highlight it more? And it's a real challenging time at the moment, I think,
Right.
um, trying to find that balance.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's the same for family. It's the same for friendships. It's like after these sort of realizations um and trying to figure out how like the dynamics of your relationships are going to shift when you start sort of like advocating for yourself or communicating your needs or like asking for accommodations um after a lifetime of masking
Mm.
because we just didn't know. It can be really difficult to kind of shift those dynamics. So it's absolutely true of the workplace, and when in that situation your livelihood is at stake, so that can feel a lot more risky. Um, but it's also the same concepts are true with your other relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships or whatever.
Mm.
There's a lot
And
at play there.
and quite often we see with you know, it's often said that, in the ADHD community that, they make good entrepreneurs, and that can be because people with ADHD are said to be very creative, and they can join the dots between um, what's perceived to be unrelated ideas, and therefore, that's a great idea for a business. So there's that aspect of it, but then there is also, on the flip side, is it might be that they just no longer feel that they're able to fit within the limited structures of companies, and therefore they feel that they have to start a business themselves. And as you were saying at the beginning, um, you started to run your own business, and then it was like, oh, there's a hell of a lot more challenges to this now, and these are sort of on my side. Um,
Right.
so I wonder if we could start um, looking towards how that journey was to start in the Kula community, and some of those challenges that you were having, and also, what the Kula community provides.
Yeah, of course. So we have my co-founder and I are both neurodivergent, some similar flavors, some different. And so we've been at this for, I mean, the better part of a year, just even in the building phases. We did a sort of like soft launch test in February and March, and opened the community. And so our doors have been open for a few months, but already we've evolved so much, not just in the community itself and the offerings, but in the way we structure our work and the way that we work together. Um, we've had to be very thoughtful and intentional. And I think me personally, because I have taken more to like the business side of building Kula, because that's my background. That's sort of my lane in this. I've continually had to rethink what I know and question whether we could try something different. Because again, I love this, like, it's like a weird paradox that I like. Our brains need structure but crave variety. Like,
Yeah.
like we actually thrive in structure, but I actually need a little bit of like, I need something different every now and then to keep my interest. And so I really was sticking to a lot of like the old rules and the old systems. And I was like, wait a second, we're doing something different here. I want to prove that we can build a business that works with the way that we're wired. And so we've had to really rethink, like, how do we structure our work week? How do we structure our work day? How do we run meetings? Like, how do we, brainstorm? How do we divide and conquer on tasks? And we've done so much in the way of um evolving just how we work together over the course of the last year, which has been really cool. And probably my favorite part of building this community is just kind of rethinking how we're doing it for ourselves. I think the thing that we've kept at the forefront is a I don't know. I mean, this isn't true for everybody, but I've heard a lot of other neurodivergent people say this, but like, he and I both live it, we say we live in the depths. Like, we really don't like this sort of surface level small talk. We're like, let's get into, I want to hear all about your special interest. Let's dive as deep as we possibly can. Or like, let's talk about our full humanity. We really have tried to first create the kind of atmosphere just among our small little team that we want to create inside the community, which is that we can show up fully uncensored and unmasked in every scenario and have it be not just like tolerated or accepted, but celebrated. And so every single meeting that we have starts with like a check-in, like, how is your soul today? How's your heart? And then we get to the work stuff, because one thing that I found to be absolutely true for myself, even when I was working on my own business, when I was doing this by myself, was that if there was other stuff going on in my life, it was really hard for me to focus on business. Like, I had to address like the things that were weighing on my heart and soul before I could produce anything of value. And that's how I'd been approaching my coaching clients as well. It's like, I had seen time and time again with these business owners I was working with, that if there were stressful things going on in their life, they didn't want to talk about like their marketing strategy or like whatever they were doing in their business. It was like, this is weighing so heavily on me. I need to have space for this first. And I just kind of made that okay. And so when we made that okay in our business, we found that a lot more could happen because we were able to move through things with the support of each other. And so that's exactly what we're trying to like create inside the context of this community. It's like when we bring our stories or our experiences out into the light and we give them like air, sometimes these things that feel really, really big and really, really heavy start to lose some of their gravity. And so we just try to provide this space inside community where we can show up like we've had a good day, we've had a bad day, we've had, a lot weighing on us. And we just create a space where everyone can be 100% who they are. And we just don't apologize for it. But in addition to that, we have real conversations. We talk about imposter syndrome and compassion and curiosity and rejection sensitivity and perfectionism. And we talk about how those things affect us in our daily lives. And then we just share with each other. We share ideas, we share tools, we share resources. We go right down, we wade right into the waters of those really hard conversations. But it's in such a safe space where everybody feels like they can learn from each other and grow. And all of these stories are told, obviously, just through the lens of neurodivergence because we don't have another viewpoint to share from. So everything is kind of like, how does this affect me as a neurodivergent person, or how does this show up in my life? And that's kind of where we've come to, that we just get to have these really cool conversations with really like, with just like-minded people who are interested in growth and exploring these topics that are going to help them kind of expand just who they are. And I don't know,
Well,
it's really, really cool.
Well, what struck me as you were sort of explaining that was, I liked the bit that you said about, checking in with each other and what's going on in the depths, as it were. And you mentioned that when you were, doing business coaching, if somebody had something else on their mind, that they weren't able to talk about X, Y, or Z. And it struck me that, businesses are made of people.
Yeah.
And those businesses are serving people. And I think it's quite easy or appealing these days to think, with the technology that we've got, that, oh, I can just start a business and the customers are just numbers, they're metrics, and I just want to make some money, etc. Is possible, but without without sort of understanding what you need from doing your job or running your business, or if you've got a larger organization and you have people that work for you, you've got to provide some sort of purpose for them to do their job. And nobody's going to want to buy from a soulless company either. So I think your approach to bringing each and everybody's individual sort of needs or feelings into play each day is going to probably enhance all of those things. It's going to enhance culture within a business, a working environment, and that's going to flow through to how you communicate with your customers, and they're going to sort of have more feeling or want to interact with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been a very iterative process, because while I had experience working with other business owners or coaching other business owners, I didn't have experience doing it intentionally in this way. And the reason that I say that I just like emphatically reject the like hustle and grind culture of entrepreneurship is that it is unsustainable, especially for a neurodivergent person, because when someone says you have to do your best, then we take that very literally and often push ourselves way beyond our limits to the point of burnout. And it also means that like if we're feeling overwhelmed or paralyzed by the sheer amount of things to do, then, again, we'll just crank through it until we burn out. And that's no way to live. But I also know, as a neurodivergent person, that there are some days where I can get more done in 3 hours than other people can do in 8.
Mm.
Um, and I know that there's other days where I feel totally in the flow and I can work for 8 hours straight and accomplish a lot of things. There's other days where the most I've got in me is 2 hours. So that was a huge part of like what we've done to kind of rethink how we work, is that we kind of check in with each other almost daily to say, like,
Mm.
how you feeling today? What have you got in the tank today? Because there's some things that drain us and there's some things that energize us, and being really mindful of even just being aware of what those things are, like being able to say, okay, there's 2 things on my calendar today that are going to really drain my energy, which means my to-do list for the things I do in between those things has to be a little bit shorter,
Mm.
because I'm not going to have the energetic or mental bandwidth to tackle those things. Um, or to even know that, like, before I head into one of those things, I need to do something that's going to give me a quick dopamine hit, like that's going to give me a little bit of energy to say, like, before I get into that meeting that I know is going to be really um like energetically taxing, I need to do something ahead of it that's going to fill my batteries, that's going to recharge my batteries. And so that awareness around just sort of how dopamine and our energetic bandwidth works has been critical in how we structure everything that we're doing.
I'd love to know what some of those little things are that give you those dopamine hits. Would you be able to
Yeah,
share some of those?
it's different every day. And so I like to approach this as a, like, I literally have lists, because sometimes, the ADHD object permanence, like, out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes I forget all the tools that I have in my toolbox if I don't
Mm.
visually
Yeah.
see them. So I literally have lists. I have lists of things that typically drain my energy, even if they're things I like doing, like a coaching client, a coaching call is draining to my energy because the amount of, like, presence and attention it takes, but I love doing it because it feels very fulfilling, um, to be able to get to do those things. But then there's other things that, like, refuel me, or ways that I like to rest. My quick dopamine hits. This is funny because this literally just happened yesterday. I had a call with a new coaching client yesterday afternoon, and those new calls, there's always like I have some familiarity with, just the exchange that
Mm-hmm.
happened before
Mm-hmm.
this call, or like I kind of know what I typically do in a discovery call, but there's still a little bit of, like, anticipation and nervousness. And so I put on my favorite playlist and I had a little dance party in my office. Like, that for me is energizing, because I love music. I love the energy of it. I put on something that's, like, upbeat. Sometimes I'll play a game on my phone, or sometimes I'll just go for a quick walk around the block for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's different, but I like to look at the list as though it's a menu at a restaurant and say, what do I need right now? Like, what is jumping off the page at me? Because I think kind of tapping into my intuition and, like, letting my body tell me what it needs has been most effective for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a motivation menu.
Exactly.
I mean that what you said, out of sight, out of mind. It's so true because I mean, I'm always getting new tools and things like that to help with, to do my work, or things to help me be more productive or whatever. But also I get really excited about exercise stuff or things like that, and I have, even when things are in sight, I can still forget that they're there. So I have, like, like a punch bag in my room, and exercise equipment there. But I still have to remind myself that they are there. And if I need to, get a dopamine hit from working out or whatever, I can still forget what it is, what the options are. And so having sort of like a reminder of what I can do in a certain situation sounds really appealing.
Yeah. That's funny because there are some days where I notice every single thing in my house that's out of place or that, like, even that just exists. And there's other days where I feel like I don't see anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's everything in my house has just become like basically it's like the paint on the walls, and I can walk right past it without even acknowledging that it exists.
Well,
Um,
it's like even doing a job like the laundry, because you can't do the laundry in one go, as in you can't decide, I'm going to do the laundry now, and then in half an hour, 10 minutes, it's finished. You have to start it, and then let it do its thing. And then you've got to take it out, dry it, put it away. So you don't know if you're going to have the same amount of attention or focus at that second time. And I've even like taken washing out and then put it closer to the stairs so that I go and take it upstairs to put it away. And then it stays there for 3 days, and I'll walk past it, every time I go up and down the stairs. It's incredible how you can ignore things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The most ADHD thing ever has just happened that you've reminded me that I heard the washing machine beep before I got on this podcast, but then ignored it and forgot to go downstairs and switch my laundry to the dryer. So I
Well,
squirreled away from that task.
I have a very satisfying, a complete. This is complete by accident. I'm sure the makers of my washing machine didn't intend for this to happen, but the certain setting that I like to just do everything on, I turn the wheel to the particular setting, then I change the temperature, um, and then press go, and it goes, eh, 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 eh. So I like putting it on, because then I go jump around, jump around, jump off. I've
That's
not explored
awesome.
as to whether it still makes those sounds when I put it on a different setting, but um, it just makes me want to do washing sometimes.
That's awesome. I need to get better at like setting the timers for myself
Hmm.
and then just getting up when they
Oh, but it's the ability to have the time and space to say, right, I need to organize something in my life, and create a new habit. You at some point when you get round to doing that, you're in the right frame of mind. You're in, using your frontal lobe, and you've got enough dopamine to solve that problem. And then you maybe set up reminders like on a habit tracker or whatever. And then for a week, 2 weeks, you're really on top of it. And
and then
then as soon as you miss one or maybe two, that's it. And
yep.
those reminders still come through, but it's like the washing on the stairs. I can walk past, and I can create. And then yeah. So is the ability to recognize once that particular solution has run its course, and you need to re-energize it, bring some interest back into it, jiggle it up a little bit.
Mhm.
That can be tricky.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good thing that our brains are capable of such creativity because we are constantly needing to create new solutions to
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
same problems so that they stay interesting.
Yeah. So tell me what, with regards to the Kula community, what does that community look like for somebody who wants to join that community? What does the Kula community offer for people?
Yeah. So the first thing and probably the most important thing to us was that we wanted our community to be hosted on a private platform. So, and mostly that's because of the types of conversations we have in there. People are sharing things that are challenging for them. They're looking for support, or, it's not always hard stuff either. We do plenty of like celebrating, and we always try to bring a little levity to some of these hard conversations. But we wanted those conversations to be happening inside of the context of a private community. So it is free to join the base membership of Kula. That membership is called Kula Connect, where you have access to our platform where you can connect with other people who are in the community. Every month, we host a couple of webinars and a couple of free events, one of which is a peer support group for neurodivergent people, and another, which is probably honestly one of my favorites, is just like a coffee hang. Like I said, we do like a Saturday morning, just, bring your favorite beverage, and we just have no agenda, which, as you can imagine, just goes in about 1,000 different directions, but it's fun, and it's a great way to kind of just get to know the other people in the community in a less formal setting. We also have just started, which is kind of exciting. We've just started special interest groups where we're starting to create groups that people can join. They can look at the list of what's available and join the groups that interest them so that they can find other people who share their special interests. Because, I'm sure you've been in a situation before where you just really want to talk about your special interest for like hours on end, and the people on the receiving end of that are like, when are we going to move on from this conversation? So special interest groups are a great place for you to connect with other people who share your special interests, who always want to talk about it.
My general challenge is, which special interest have I got this month?
Exactly. Yeah, we could go a lot of different directions. So yeah, we have special interest groups that people can join where they can just chat with each other, share resources, share links, like just share all the things they're excited about.
So just to clarify, when we're talking about a community, we're talking about an online community.
Platform,
So people can join from anywhere, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. And it's hosted on Mighty Network. So it's a really cool platform that allows us to kind of create different spaces that have different purposes. So we do have just sort of like a general lounge space that's kind of like the catch-all, like post whatever's on your mind, or ask a question, or just start a conversation. But then what we're introducing starting in August, which is really exciting, is previously we had a membership structure that was like all access pass to the workshops that we do, which are things that are a little bit more focused and include a practical component, like an actual activity or something that you can put into action. We previously, and we still have that membership, you can still have like the all access pass, but we've also introduced, starting in August, the ability to just pay for what you want to go to. So we're doing like an a la carte option that we're introducing in addition to the all access pass. But we do everything from workshops to other live events, like take a yoga class or come to a live meditation or a live sound bath. We're going to start introducing more things like that. And so that's really exciting because we want to try to make everything that we do as accessible as possible to people. So
what other examples of, when you say the word workshop, what other things can people expect that happens in a workshop?
Yeah, usually we host them for about 60 to 90 minutes, and we'll sort of introduce a topic at the beginning, but we'll have a lot more interaction and conversation where we'll like pose questions, and people who are involved in the workshop can kind of weigh in on their knowledge or experience, which is really cool because none of us, as much as something might be our special interest, none of us are experts in everything, but it's always interesting to hear another person's perspective or interpretation of something. And we've done a lot of different things. Sometimes we just do more of like a journaling or reflection as part of our exercise to kind of see what comes up or what we can kind of process. Because, if we're talking about something like compassion, it's like for a lot of us, compassion for other people is very easy and compassion for ourselves is very hard. Well, like, why is it so hard? What were we taught or what have we believed that makes it hard? And how can we show ourselves more compassion? So sometimes it's a lot of like internal reflective stuff, but other times it's something more practical. Like I've also done workshops on the idea of building a sustainable life. What are your energy drainers versus the things that charge you back up? And how can you structure your days to have a good, like, kind of harmonious balance of those things so that you don't get to the point of burnout?
Yeah.
I've also done workshops on establishing your core values because for me, there's something about when I went through that exercise for myself, probably about like 4 or 5 years ago, um, having clarity and kind of like definitions for why these things are most important to me has grounded me in a way that I didn't necessarily expect. And it's been critical to me as a business owner because anytime like a project or a client comes up, I can look at everything and say, is it in alignment with my values or is it not? And it helps me make decisions, which is great for the ADHD brain because sometimes I just want to chase shiny objects. But if I look at some of those things through the lens of my core values, sometimes I'm like, it sounds really cool right now, but it's not necessarily in alignment with the long game we're playing here. And
Yeah.
it kind of forces me to check myself in those moments. So we've done a lot of different things so far, and we're going to continue to offer new workshops every month.
Mm. Yeah, I was having that exact same conversation the other day with somebody about, why am I distracted by certain things? Why am I restless? And exactly what you said, looking through the lens of my core values or my purpose,
Yep.
it's like that then provides a framework to decide. And maybe there's just like a certain number of hooks you can hook new things onto, and you say, right, is there a hook for this to go on? And if there's no value or purpose that it aligns with, then you say, oh, that's a distraction. And
Yeah.
and yeah, because it's almost quite a hard thing to. It sounds quite simple. What are my values? What are my purposes? But until you actually sit down and do it, you've got no reference point to go back to. And I think unless you physically get it out of your brain into something that you can see, out of sight, out of mind, you
Yep.
can easily convince yourself that your values and your purpose do align with that new shiny object because you're not lying because you haven't written it down. So yeah, being able to do that and then sort of filter out what are distractions and what aren't is quite important, I think.
Yeah. Yep. It's exactly right. And I love the analogy of like hooks. Is there a hook that this can go at? Like we only have so many of those
Mhm.
available, but we tend to overcommit to everything. And there's a lot of reasons for that. For me, a lot of it is rooted in rejection sensitivity and that like if I don't say yes, then this person won't like me anymore. And so I tend to like overcommit or like overpromise. Which yeah, I like that visual of like a limited number of hooks to hang
Mm.
things on is critically important in
Or
how we make decisions or prioritize.
or even because one thing that I struggle with is believing that every new interest or hobby that I have is going to be the one thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And sometimes it's worth just identifying something as, no, I'm just going to do this for the fun of it. It is a
Yeah.
distraction. I'm going to allow myself the time to do it, but it doesn't have to take over my life. I don't have to become this, and then
Yeah.
because then
I
there's
don't
no
have to
fate.
monetize it. I don't have to turn it
Yeah.
into something. It can just be what it is.
Because
I
then
think
when
you're
you
right.
inevitably drop it, you don't have to punish yourself for not seeing it through. You can say, no, that was just a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so I wonder because you mentioned before that you were doing coaching call with clients. I just wonder how that fits. Do you do that with people within the community? So if somebody joins the community, do they have access to one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, we do offer one-on-one coaching packages. We're also going to be introducing group coaching because again, one-on-one coaching packages, especially for a lot of the people that I want to work with who are like new entrepreneurs just starting a business. One-on-one coaching might not always be accessible. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And so we're also we're going to be offering group coaching, which we're introducing in August as well, where we just sort of grab a group of like 5 to 6 people who are the group coaching is going to be somewhat structured in that there will be like an overarching theme. So if, I'm going to run a group that says like, we're going to spend 3 months building a foundation for you to start a business. And it's just going to be like, let's just get all the basics in place so that you can start. Things don't have to be perfect. It's not going to be 100% like, fully baked, but we're going to get enough in place for you to get started. Then I'll take 5 or 6 people who are in a similar spot who can kind of like share their ideas with each other and learn from each other while we kind of guide them through this process over the course of 3 or 4 months. And that's a more accessible solution. So we're trying to be as creative and accessible as possible in having some different offerings. Um, and then there's going to be additional group coaching that doesn't have to do with business. Some of the other coaches on our team would do something more like this is like an internal journey through like compassion and curiosity, or like how we kind of grow and navigate, whether it's just like our neurodivergence or life or overcoming. I think like the unmasking process is also really challenging. And so like,
Mm.
let's walk through some of those things together, because it's always easier to walk those paths alone when you don't feel like you're the only one who feels that way. That's one of the best things that we found inside community, is that like the most validating thing, or the thing that sometimes makes us feel the most hope, is knowing that we're not the only one, because we spend so much time in our brains like swirling, because our brains are very quick, that sometimes we feel like we're the only one that feels that way. And when we find out that we're not, again, like the weight of it gets lifted a little bit, and then we can, work through it together and just walk through it together. So there's going to be different themes available for group coaching. We do offer one-on-one coaching. All of that is on our website and is going to be launching. Like, we'll have more dedicated spaces inside the community for that starting in August.
I was starting to smile a little bit during that because I can remember, like, before I realized what ADHD was and having it myself. So I used to think my brain is unique. And then when I found out, oh yeah, lots of people who have those same things, it was like, oh, that's relieving in one sense, but
Obsessed.
it's sad that there's lots of other people like me, uh, not that unique.
But it is like, it's such an interesting journey, isn't it? After like this realization, because there's some days where it feels just so like deeply validating, because you start to have like the language to explain or to make sense of your whole life, everything in your past, like up until the now. But then there's also moments where it still feels so, um, I don't know, just the opposite.
Mm.
Like, it feels
Yeah,
so like,
I'm.
why does this have to be so hard?
Yeah,
And yeah,
I don't think it was a necessarily good thought to have had. Everybody needs to know about my unique brain. Um,
yeah.
but um, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly, realizing that if it's so unique, people should know more about it. But I can't get to a position where I can share this with anyone, and then that's where it is relieving to understand that you're not the only person that's facing those challenges. I suppose the challenges are it's good to know that those can be overcome because other
Yeah.
people have faced them. and
Yep.
and and change them. And we are all unique in our own way, and being able to overcome those challenges allows you to express those more, or use those unique strengths or flavors to their best ability. Because that's the saddest thing about it, is that there's so many things that we can do and do really well, but because we're trying to fit into a neurotypical box,
Mm.
a lot of those things get overshadowed or overlooked and underused, and it's can be quite sad at times.
Mhm.
But with communities like the Kula community, you're changing all that. So that sounds great.
That's the
What's
goal.
what's happening? What's the future hold for you, or the rest of the year, or even next year? Have you any big plans that you're able to reveal, or are they all top secret?
Not necessarily top secret. I think what we've learned so far is that we are very much open and trying to um, just get feedback from the people who are in our community. We've evolved so much already in just the span of like 6 months, in the way that we approach things, the way our community is structured. Um, and so it's hard to say what even like thinking a year out or 5 years out looks like, but we do know that um, we are we're excited about having the sort of free version of Kula available just for people to find a place to connect, because it's hard to find that kind of community where you feel like you are truly seen and understood and you can just come as you are, like unmasked. And so that feels just so like deeply purposeful, and we're so
Mm.
excited about being able to welcome people into that community and then to make the other offerings a bit more accessible with um like some of our resources are priced pay what you can. We'll have some things that are available for free. We'll have free workshops, free webinars, free sessions, and then we'll have other things that are available. Our ultimate goal is to just kind of meet people where they are
Mm.
and make things as accessible as possible so that they just feel like they have opportunities to learn and grow in a space that's conducive to how they're wired.
Mm. So if there's any listeners that are are eager to join the Kula community, can you explain how and where they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is findyourkula.com. Kula is, by the way, I don't remember if we've said this, it's a Sanskrit word for community. So findyourcommunity.com, findyourkula.com.
Yeah.
There's buttons all over our website to join the community for free. You just create a free account and you'll have access to all the free spaces, but you'll also have visibility into those other areas if you want to explore one-on-one coaching or group coaching or join a workshop. You'll have visibility into all those options, but um, we would just be happy to have you join us for a coffee hang or join us for a peer support group or join us for a monthly webinar and come hang out and chat.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I think that was a fascinating conversation, and I wish you all the best with the Kula community, and I highly recommend any listeners go and check it out.
Hmm. Yes, thank you so much for having me again for the opportunity. I loved this conversation and hope to see you all inside Kula soon.
Indeed. Okay, well, that's all for now, and take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you want to hear more episodes, then please subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps to spread the word. So if you know anyone this episode could help, then please share it with your friends. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram at ADHD_goals, and you can find me on Facebook too. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you can email me at hello@adhdgoals.co. And finally, if you're struggling to manage your ADHD and you would like me to be your coach, then please head over to my website and get in touch. Until next time, bye for now.